This segment's going to look at a question. And the question comes down to it, are viruses living organisms or not? And while this sounds like a very simple question, it's a little bit more complex than we might think. So, let's give a look at it. When we go and we start looking at the standard biological definition of what is a living organism has certain characteristics that it must possess in order to be able to consider to be living. Number one is homeostasis, which means it has to be able to establish its own equilibrium within its own cells. So homeostasis is a very important thing, where we're looking at regulation of its internal environment. We look at organization. Organization means, are we looking at something that is cellular? Are we looking at something that's less than cellular? What kind of organization does it have within it, and how complex is it? We look at metabolism. Metabolism is basically a sum total of all the biochemical pathways that occur within something that is what we would consider to be some sort of living organism. So within this, it becomes very important to have metabolism and biochemical pathways. We look at growth. Growth says that we have a higher rate of anabolism or build up of material than we do of catabolism or breakdown of material. So you must have some sort of metabolism in order to be able to have some sort of growth. And when you have that metabolism, you have to be able to build up more than you break down. So a very important concept there as well. We have the concept of adaptation. And adaptation basically says, is the organism able to change over time in response to its environment? If organisms do not change over time in response to their environment, if they don't keep up, they enter the list of those things that are no longer present on planet Earth, or the extinct. Dinosaurs were unable to adapt to the environment of that time, and that's why they're no longer around today. Estimates are that some 99% of all organisms that ever lived on planet Earth are gone because they have been unable to adapt, and things don't always adapt forever. So adaptation is very important. Adaptation also takes in a response to stimuli, because you adapt to stimuli that are around you. When you study, either you learn how to study or you are unable to adapt to it. Okay, you're unable to respond to the stimuli around you. So you have to be able to, adapt as well. And then we've got reproduction. And reproduction basically looks at how does the organism continue to propagate itself, either sexually or asexually, by producing offspring. So in order to have a living organism, we have to meet up with these characteristics. Now, let's look at this relative to viruses. Do viruses have homeostasis? Simple answer is no. They are unable to regulate their internal environment. So therefore, no, they do not have homeostasis. Do they have organization to them? Not on the cellular level, but if we look at this happens to be a virus particle, and you can see that it's got several different layers in there, even though these are colorized. It's got several different layers in there, and this has some sort of organization to it. I like this one. This is a bacteriophage. This actually looks like something that would have been created by NASA scientists as a space probe or something like that. It is very organized in what it's got there. So therefore, I'm going to have to look at it and say organization. I think that's fairly solid. Does it have metabolism? Straight textbook definition? No. Virus has to get into a host cell in order to be able to do anything. So therefore, there is no metabolism. Growth? No metabolism. You don't have a larger amount of anabolism than catabolism, therefore no growth. Adaptation. Now let's think about this one. I'm giving that a yes. The flu changes every year. It evolves. We have things that are changing. We just had an outbreak of Ebola worldwide. We find out that the Ebola virus is modifying itself. It's responding to some sort of stimuli. It may not be as a human would respond to it or something like that, but on some sort of level, it is responding to stimuli. And therefore, yes, there is some sort of adaptation occurring with these. And those that are unable to adapt eventually may get knocked out. If we look at smallpox, smallpox didn't adapt like flu virus or like Ebola did, and therefore we were able to take it out, right? So adaptation becomes very, very interesting in here. Reproduction? No. Why? Because a virus must get into a host cell in order to be able to sequester the host cell's metabolism in order to be able to produce new virus particles. No host cell, virus can't do anything. So when we look at reproduction, we're going to have to give it a no. Therefore, overall, we've got 2 in favor, 4 against. Okay. Now, it's not clear-cut absolutely no. It's not a good rounding absolutely yes. But, the question comes down to it. It starts fitting some of these characteristics, and it starts fitting some good ones in there. Do we consider it to be living or not? That's a challenge that we all have to deal with. And in the future, some of these may be modified, so we're going to find out.